So, now that I talked about the uncomfortableness of the drama, let's dive into something a little bit more lighthearted, like a romantic comedy. Let's talk about You, Me, and Tuscany. So, You, Me, and Tuscany was directed by Kat Coro, and it stars Haley Bailey and Regé-Jean Page, and it's about this woman played by Haley Bailey who she meets this guy from Italy, and she decides to travel to Italy and stay at his villa, despite the fact that he's not there and that nobody else knows that she's there. And when his family discovers that she's there, she lies and says, "Hey, I'm actually engaged to your family member and such." So when she meets this other guy, played by Regé-Jean Page, conflict arises, and we have a romantic comedy. So this was a movie that I was not looking forward to. Not because I'm not into romantic comedies. I don't mind a good romantic comedy every once in a while. But I feel like with any movie genre, it just shouldn't matter what genre it is, just as long as you're impressed by it. And, why not talk about this movie, especially after something like, again, the drama, which is a little too heavy. But this movie is not necessarily bad. This movie is just fine. It's serviceable enough. If you love romantic comedies, you'll probably love this movie. If you're like me, you can kind of see, like, there's some fun in this movie, but overall, it's just fine at best. So let's talk about the movie itself. Haley Bailey, Regé-Jean Page, their chemistry does work. I do think that she's the standout of this movie. I will add, too, again, she was arguably the best part about Little Mermaid 2023. And I thought she was really good in this movie, too. I thought her character was very sweet and wholesome, despite some of the crazy things she does. Regé-Jean Page, the chemistry, like, it does follow a lot of cliches. Like, I don't want to go into it, but, like, when you kind of see, like, what they're like at first, it's like, you kind of know where this is going to go. But you do eventually buy their chemistry. Meanwhile, Italy does look gorgeous. I do feel like they should have shot more around Italy, but for the most part, it is at this villa, and I do think that they could have done a little bit more with that. I do think that the movie has some funny moments here and there. I would say towards the beginning, there are some funny jokes here and there. There are some funny characters, like the lead character has a friend in the U.S. who does provide a few funny jokes here and there. There's also a really funny cameo from someone from an iconic romantic comedy from the 2000s, and it was like very early on. It's like, wow, she's in this movie. That's really cool. It's not a big role, but it was actually really cool that she was there. And I do think that the movie does wind up subverting some tropes with romantic comedies and such. Like, there's like when something happens about halfway in the movie, it's like, oh, I kind of figured this may have happened like towards the end of the movie or something like that. But no, they actually kind of subvert it in a way. It's like, okay, that's interesting, I guess. May not be great, but at least you're kind of not following the exact formula for romantic comedies and such. So I do think this movie at least tries to have a little fun with the genre, but that doesn't mean it always works out. If you've ever seen a romantic comedy, this movie does have some cliches in this movie, and there are some cliches in this movie that, unfortunately for me, just didn't work. Like, there's one that's revealed about two-thirds of the way through the movie, and I won't go into it, but I felt like not only was it just not funny or not a good idea to do that, but also they don't really add anything to it after this reveal. I don't want to say what it is, but it's like, oh, well, that's kind of disappointing to know that. And then it's like, okay, let's see what they're going to do with this. Hardly anything. You'd think this plot point would be bigger in a movie like this, but it just isn't. And I felt like the movie just didn't want to go with that. And also, the jokes, again, they can be hit or miss. So there are some moments in this movie that are very funny. I would say about half the time the jokes actually landed for me. It's like, okay, they're not so funny like I can remember them now, but they were like, while I was watching the movie, I was kind of laughing, so I guess I kind of have to say, you got me to laugh at least. So, Yumi and Tuscany, even though this movie's not necessarily great, it's cute enough to kind of recommend. Maybe when this hits a streaming service, you could check it out and kind of have a good time with it. But then again, I'm like, why is this movie coming out in April instead of February? Like, I feel like this would come out around Valentine's Day and actually would do really well. But I don't know. I'm not a studio executive. I didn't think of that. So anyway, I do think that with this movie, the two leads have enough chemistry to kind of carry the movie. Italy looks great. There are some funny moments here and there. They do subvert some tropes here and there, but also there are some cliches in the genre that they use in this movie that just don't work. And I felt like they could have developed more when they were trying to do that. And also, the jokes again are pretty hit or miss. This movie definitely has an old school feel to it, in that it's like a 2000s comedy where it literally ends with a blooper reel. It's like, yeah, this movie probably would have done a lot better probably 20 years ago, but, you could do far worse than this movie, but at the same time, you could do far better. Again, it kind of works because the two leads, particularly Haley Bailey, they make the movie work in a weird way. I'll give You, Me, and Tuscany 2 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Cute enough if you're watching it on a streaming service, but it's just okay if you're watching it in a theater. So, what was the last really good romantic comedy you saw? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.